Hello and welcome to ET Interview. Words cannot express how excited I am to welcome Punit Renjen, CEO of Deloitte Global, on this edition of ET Interview. Punit, of course, leads the biggest professional and advisory firm, Deloitte, in the world. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, we plan to understand, engage, debate, and even deliberate what his view of the world is. How has the shape of the world changed because of this pandemic? And what are the permanent, temporary, and transient changes which now would be visible and which now would be more and more formidable? Punit, fantastic to have you on ET now. Thank you for joining us. Punit, when world discovered pandemic, it was more like a shakeout. It was a shakeout for the medical community. It was a shakeout for the business community, and it was a shakeout for financial markets. IMF went on record and they've called it the biggest recession the world has seen in last 100 years. But if you look at where we stand right now, stock markets are booming, recovery is back on track, and the whole demand inertia seems to be coming back. So in your assessment, how and why the world has recovered so smartly and dramatically from the March and April dip?
Well, it is unprecedented. The economic contraction, the global impact of this pandemic is absolutely unprecedented. I've been in professional life now for 34 years with Deloitte, and I've certainly never experienced anything like this, where starting in March, our entire workforce, 300,000 professionals, had to go remote. So this is absolutely unprecedented. It has impacted communities. It has impacted individuals. It has impacted economies. And it has been a difficult year. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines that have just been announced. I believe that we are looking at potentially coming out of what has been, as I said, the most unprecedented year I've certainly experienced.
So let's divide the world into three parts: survival, revival, and flourish. So what, to your mind, are the permanent changes which will happen because of this pandemic?
Well, I think the pandemic reaffirmed a few things and disrupted many things. So let me start by suggesting to you that there are four critical changes: the way we work, the way business is conducted, the power of technology and its ability to transform the way that we conduct business, and certain silver linings, particularly around ESG. So let's start with the first one, in the way that we work. As I said to you, take Deloitte as an example, 300,000 professionals across the globe. In March, everybody working remotely. We have 800 offices globally. We are in 150 different countries, and we will work differently. More remote work, more flexible work. Will we be working 300,000 individuals remotely when we are on the other side of the pandemic? No. Will we have 800 offices? Probably not. So the way that we work is going to change. The way that business is conducted, supply chains, the need for ecosystems. I was on a panel this morning with a pharma CEO, and he talked about the need for ecosystems as we develop medicines to counter future pandemics or future disease. But ecosystems are here to stay. Technology, particularly digitization, cloud, and cyber, has been reaffirmed by this pandemic. There has been more digital transformation and change in the last 9 months than in the last 2 or 3 years. And then finally, the silver lining, issues like climate, I think have come to the forefront. And I don't believe that we are going to go back and accept the way that we used to live as we come out on the other side of the pandemic. Let me give you an example. I grew up in India, and I went to a boarding school up in the Shivaliks. And I remember as a young boy being able to see the Himalayas from my boarding school. And over the last 40 years or so, with air pollution, that view had vanished. Given that we didn't travel as much, given that economic activity was impacted, that view of the Himalayas was again visible from my boarding school. I got photographs. I think the point I'm making is issues around climate, income inequality, racial injustice, I think have come to the forefront, and as a global community, I believe we will address them. That has been the silver lining of this pandemic.
But Mr. Renjen, some would also argue that a lot of changes which currently we are experiencing, whether it is work from home or travel less, they all are transient in nature. And once we get a shot in our arm, which is the vaccine is discovered, it could be back to a normal life, a life which we've lived, let's say, before the world discovered a problem called corona.
I believe that there will be a swing back of the pendulum, as I said. Will we have 300,000 professionals, using the Deloitte example, working remotely? No. But will we be traveling the way that we used to? Absolutely not. So there will be a hybrid model in the way that we work. Supply chains, as an example. I've spoken to several CEOs in the last number of weeks. Everybody is looking at their supply chains, and I think they will be looking for more effective, efficient ways to structure the supply chain. So that will change. So will we operate the way that we've operated the last 9 months? Absolutely not. But will the efficiencies, effectiveness, the learnings from this pandemic be applied? Absolutely. And I think cloud, digital, cyber, items that have been reaffirmed by this pandemic, because they lead to more efficiency, more effectiveness, will be adopted by businesses across the globe. Let me talk a little bit about, and I think this is not maybe a popular topic. I believe that globalization and the rules of globalization will change. But I think globalization and a global community will persist. One good example is what the pandemic has pointed out to. You mentioned vaccines. It is critically important that the globe cooperate to try and address solving this pandemic. It can't be done individually by individual countries. That's why globalization is here to stay as well, in a different form.
Mr. Renjen, you are in a perfect position to tell us what is coming next. And allow me to be slightly more elaborative with my question, which is that with each passing decade, new set of winners always emerge. If one looks at the set of Fortune 500 companies, the list is never permanent. It changes and evolves in every 5 to 10 years, even 5 to 15 years. So what do you think will now emerge as a clear winner? Which are the companies, sectors, which in a sense will occupy the top spots now?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I would be in a totally different business. So it's very difficult to predict in the next 15 to 20 years which companies will thrive, which ones will not. I can say this. What the pandemic has shown is that good businesses, maybe even great businesses, play solid defense, protect themselves, make sure that they can weather what has been unprecedented change and disruption, but at the same time play great offense, make contrarian moves. And as we come out of this pandemic, as the vaccines take hold, you will see the ones that played great offense thrive. So they did respond to the pandemic, they started recovering, and then they will thrive. What I will say is that Asia and India will have a prominent position in the global Fortune 500 composition. We as an organization are betting on Asia. We're bullish on Asia. We're bullish on India. I think India has tremendous potential. I buy into the premise that India being a $5 trillion economy is something that is achievable in the near term. And I think that it's time for India, it's India's time going forward. So I think the composition of the Fortune 500, I can say with some confidence, will have more membership from Asian companies, including Indian companies.
So Mr. Renjen, what makes you bullish on India? And why do you think India's contribution to the Fortune 500 club will increase?
Well, I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm biased, given my Indian heritage. But India has a lot going for it, demographics being one. And India has proven in the service sector, for instance, that it has the talent, it has the ability to really dominate globally. Indian companies, many of them, are now playing on the global front and playing really well on the global front. Deloitte as an entity is betting big on India. We've been in India for 125 years. We have 55,000 professionals in India. When I met with the Prime Minister prior to COVID hitting in February, I made a commitment that we will double our size, maybe even greater than that in India. And the reason why we're doing that is because of the talent pool that exists in India, the democratic norms that exist, and we're betting on reforms that have been proposed coming to fruit. And so I think we as an organization are bullish on India, and India with its democratic tradition, with its demographics, with the talent pool, with the marketplace, with 1 billion individuals, I think India is absolutely the right country to bet on.
So what is the update after meeting Prime Minister Modi? Have you doubled your workforce? Let me try and get a headline from you.
We have not doubled our workforce. COVID-19 hit, which certainly has disrupted everybody's plans, including ours. But we are doubling our commitment that we will add individuals. We have added individuals in India, even in this period of time. Though, to be truthful, COVID has certainly impacted our plans. But we expect that once the vaccine takes hold, that we will go back to our original projections and double our workforce in India over the next number of years.
So which are the areas, Mr. Renjen, do you think Indian companies have an edge? It could be an edge because of skill. It could be an edge because of scale. It could be an edge largely because of critical mass. So what are the policy frameworks which do you think they need to be implemented so that Indian entrepreneur can really maximize in this environment?
Well, digitization, cloud, technology enablement is certainly something that India has a track record. Certainly Deloitte is investing in those areas in India. But as businesses rethink their supply chains, India certainly has arbitrage advantages. And if the right policies are put in place, I believe that there is an opportunity to capture, or in the least, provide options for expansion of supply chains in India. The pharmaceutical sector, vaccine production, for instance, India is going to play a leading role. And so there are various sectors within India that can play a leading role, particularly as global businesses look to re-engineer, rethink their supply chains. I think it's also important, as I said, many Indian companies are now starting to play on the global front. And I think moving full speed ahead on that is something that Indian companies will focus on, and I expect that in the next number of years, you will see more Indian companies leading globally.
Deloitte globally has been championing the whole cause of ESG, environment, social importance, and governance. Let's hear your thoughts on that. How can companies adopt that?
First off, Deloitte is a purpose-driven organization. What we mean by that is our purpose is to make an impact that matters for our clients, for our people, and for the communities that we live and work in. A number of years ago, we realized that for us to be successful, we must make an impact on all those dimensions. We must serve clients with distinction. We must create a tangible, measurable, attributable impact for our clients. We hire the very best individuals. We don't make a product. We are distinguished by the quality of our people, but we hire the very best, and through mentorship, we give them an opportunity to learn the craft. And then we realize that it is really important for us to give back to our communities. And the way that we give back to our communities is certainly we give back in dollars. We gave $265 million last year. But we've decided that in every community that we operate, we must in a unique way give back. A commitment that we have made is to lever our most precious asset, which is our 300,000 professionals. And we have said that we will impact positively 50 million individuals. Of that, we said we will make a commitment of 10 million in India. In India, we are targeting our efforts on women and girls. There are about 175 million women and girls in India that are not educated and therefore don't have the opportunity to take advantage of how fast India is developing. So we're really focused on impacting positively 10 million women and girls. So that's, and what we have seen in the last 5 years, our bottom line results have been the best that we have experienced in the last 30 that I've been with the firm, 34 that I've been with the firm. So this notion of looking at a broader bottom line works. It is the right thing to do. It is the right business thing to do. Now, I talked about giving back to the communities that we live and work in. For us, climate is really important as well. Climate change is here. Climate change is a very big issue that the global community, the global humanity has to address. And we as an organization have committed that we will be net zero by 2030. But we will go beyond that. As the leading professional services firm in the world, we will influence our clients, we will influence our ecosystem to do the right thing for climate. It is the right thing to do. It is the right business thing to do.
Now, Mr. Renjen, you understand the importance of both dominance and relevance. If companies are dominant, they would get higher margins and higher return ratios. If companies are relevant, they will be able to grow, and they will be able to grow their business both organically and inorganically. What will be your advice to entrepreneurs? How can they remain in business, and how can they grow in this extremely competitive and global environment?
Well, I think you answered the question in the way that you asked it. I think those two aspects are critically important. But for businesses, it is really important to do something where it creates value for clients or for customers, so that somebody will pay you for the service or the product that you provide. And the value that is created should be at a level where you can actually charge a premium. And you must do business the right way, which is, as I said, using the Deloitte example, the triple bottom line, do right by your clients and your customers, certainly do right by the people that you hire, the way that you develop them, the way that you compensate them, and then importantly, do right by the communities that you live and work in. And I think that formula over time works. Deloitte is a very good example of that. Let me just amplify a point that I made previously where I said it is the right thing to do and it is the right business thing to do. I mentioned to you that Deloitte is distinguished by the quality of the people that we hire. Every year we hire between 50 to 60,000 people globally. We look at about 5 million resumes. And I go on campus, and I've been on campus at Indian universities as well, some of the best universities. Invariably now, I'm asked by these individuals that I covet for Deloitte, what does Deloitte do beyond its core profit motive? So if I want to hire the very best individuals, I must be able to demonstrate to them that I am actually doing something good for the communities that I live and work in. And it goes beyond that. For the 300,000 individuals that work at Deloitte, many of them millennials, it is really important that Deloitte do right by the communities that we live and work in. Whether it is giving back through World Class, the 50 million commitment that I talked about, or it is addressing climate, or it is addressing gender or some of the racial issues that we've experienced in the West.
Bill Gates, Mr. Renjen, famously said, you cannot, or you should not rather, overestimate disruption in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. What is your view on disruption? Where do you think maximum disruption is likely to happen?
Well, I think Bill Gates is absolutely right. I think it's foolish if you ever disagree with Bill Gates, but I think the pandemic, particularly the last 9 to 10 months, have been very disruptive. We started this interview talking about remote work. Just imagine, in a matter of weeks in the month of March, we took 300,000 individuals remote. And we are, this year, growing. We've been growing at double-digit rates over the last 5 years that I've been the global CEO. This year, that has modulated significantly, but we are still growing, which tells me that we have the ability now, even in this remote environment, this disruptive environment, to be able to deliver value for our clients. So this has been a very disruptive moment. And as I said, the first thing that businesses did, our clients did, all the CEOs that I spoke to did was to respond, is to make sure that they created the defense so that they could thrive through what was a very disruptive event. In the case of Deloitte, it was making sure that we had adequate liquidity. Second, that we were making decisions based on facts. And so we used a scenario-based approach to estimate as to what potentially could happen and came up with the levers that we would pull. And it was a way to try and mitigate the disruption that this pandemic brought across the board. Now, there are sectors, there are customer behaviors that will be disrupted. I didn't know Instacart, which may not exist in India, but it's a delivery service here in the United States. And over the last 9 or 10 months, I haven't been to a grocery store, but Instacart has delivered groceries to our house. It has disrupted the grocery business, the retail business. It will be here to stay. As I said in a response earlier, we will modulate down. I will go to a grocery store when I have a vaccination in my arm, but we will keep using Instacart. So there will be disruption that this pandemic has brought that will be a way of life in the way that we work, in the way that we conduct business post-pandemic.
Well, Mr. Renjen, an absolute delight and a pleasure to have you on ET Now. We certainly hope to see much more of you going forward.